Welcome, everyone, back for another episode of the Night Shift Deputy Podcast. Hope everybody's having a good Mother's Day. Hope everybody's treating their moms good with some good gifts and just showing a lot of love. So we're gonna start, where we left off. So I'm off FTO. I had a partner for a little while, and then they moved him to a different shift, and now I get my new partner, Roger Spann. He was one of my first real partners that I had for a very long time that I got real close with, and he showed me a lot of things. He had experience, a lot more experience than I had. He worked at a big department, and was exposed to a lot of stuff over there. So he taught me a lot of stuff. So now he's my new partner, and we're back on nights. Still working with the same Emory officer that I worked with whenever I started nights. So it was just us three. After midnight, every now and then, some of the cities would stay out. I know Point would stay out a little bit later because they were doing a lot of narcotic stuff, doing solid work. Otwell over there, and then the chief, of course. They were doing really good stuff. They were writing more search warrants for houses over there than I ever seen my whole entire career at Rains County. So, so we get put back on nights. Which is, it's crazy. I'm showing Roger, my new partner, kind of how things are done at this department, because he's used to how a different agency did it. And I would show him some things, and he's like, "Oh man, this is weird. I've never seen this before." But Roger, he was a real calm guy. Man, anytime we had to wrestle or fight with somebody, he was just being so polite about it. But one of the things, over time when we were, all working together, is I was still new, so I was still, I hadn't really learned the code switching, I guess. Some people might have different language for it, but going from being nice to not being so nice. I was strictly nice the whole time to anybody. So I would have somebody just sitting there motherfucking me to death, and I'm sitting there just like, "Oh yes sir, no sir." But he didn't like seeing that when people would do that, so he would step in and start getting in people's asses every time. He didn't like anybody being that way, and that was one of the things he would teach me. He's talking to me, sometimes you just gotta quit being the nice guy and get into people's asses sometimes. Not every time, but sometimes. And the Emory officer at the time too, he was he was teaching me a lot as well, which the Emory officer, he was just blunt, straight up honest. He called it as he saw it. Didn't sugarcoat things. I know sometimes he cracked a lot of jokes, a lot of funny jokes. Some of the, I've got to look for the book, but I had a book, and I wrote down all the things that I heard, like all these phrases and things I would hear from different people. One of the phrases that I heard that I laughed, and still this day I use it, but he used to say, "Sometimes you just gotta get a green M&M," and which there's a story behind that, but wrote that down. I'll have to find it so I can share some of the phrases that I heard over the years from different officers and some of the troopers and stuff like that. But yeah, so we're back on nights. I'm still trying to learn more about the job. I'm still, I'm comfortable. Some things I still don't know yet. still had to, ask for help, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. My FTO process wasn't very long. But at that time, it was kind of a sink or swim kind of thing during that time, because we didn't really get a lot of calls. So it was kind of like you would have to get really exposed to a lot more things to be able to, be able to learn a lot, which, we didn't really get exposed. But anytime there was something major happen, it was like major stuff. But it was every now and then, wasn't a lot. But so we're back on nights. They're out. The Emory officer and my partner Roger, they would go out and stop cars, and they would find dope instantly. I mean, it was like that. It was just like, every other night they were finding it, and I would go out and try to do the same thing, because every day I'd get the shift. I'm like, man, I'm gonna find some dope today, and they're like, all right, we'll go find it. We'll back you up. So I would go and I would pull over every single car that I could possibly stop, search it. And one of the funny things, I'm still kind of new, right? And every time I would pull people out of the car, and they would give me consent to search, but I'd pull people out of the car and I'd look at them, and I'd talk to them. I'm like, look, now at any time you can withdraw your consent, and I have to quit searching your vehicle. I would say this every single time, and I remember looking back at the Emory officer and my partner Roger, and they're like, their eyes would get real big, and they're just kind of like, did he really just say that? So after I got done searching the car, they pulled me aside and they're like, hey, I'm glad you're affording the opportunity to people and letting them know that they can refuse for you to search their vehicle at any time. But don't say that. You don't have to say that. And I'm like, oh. And they were really surprised that nobody really withdrew their consent anytime I would search, but I never found anything. But I remember the first time that I did find something, it was off of Kid. It was a little bit of weed, a little bit of weed inside a pipe, and I remember feeling that was the happiest feeling in the world, was just excited. So then after that, that's when it set in, like, oh man, yeah, I'm gonna, because I found it on my own, stopped the car, did everything right, talking to the guy, and they all show the signs, nervousness and stuff like that. And I didn't even write the guy a ticket. The thing at the time was, how good was your throwing arm? And weed was, wasn't really a big deal around there. We were more concerned about meth than anything. So now I found my first little bit of drugs, and now I'm hungry. Now I'm still just trying to, because I'm wanting to find meth. My partner Roger and the Emory officer, they would find all kinds of stuff. I mean, every other night it was wild to me how much they would find and what they would find. And I was always like, man, I want to find something like that. They would find meth, guns, and I'm still stopping anything that moves, and still trying to get it into my head that, man, it's just the luck of the draw, and you gotta look at these vehicles and just watch how people react whenever they see you, and when you get up there, start talking to them and play dumb with them is what my partners on night shift were telling me at that time. And so I'm still trying to learn that game, and was fortunate that had them helping me out. We would all go to calls together. All the cities would, if it was in the area or if it was something serious, they would come. And so whenever when they wrote their search warrant, I remember this one time they had wrote a search warrant, and that was the first one I ever went to. And during this time, and even at the end of my career, I was known, I was the gear dude, the guy that had all the gear, right? Would go out and buy, any new piece of tactical equipment there was on the market. Because I like that stuff. I like having the gear, I like having all that stuff. Still have most of it. Just can't get rid of it. But I remember showing up, and I had bought a one of those OpsCore ballistic helmets, and showed up with it on. And I remember the sergeant and the chief at Point, they were just like, heck yeah, that's cool. But I was the only one that was wearing a helmet that day. And so it was just funny. Everybody's like, oh, nice helmet. Gave me the nickname of the helmet guy, or the tactical guy. But so did that, went to that little search warrant. That was just a little funny story I had to tell. But so one of the first times, and this is one of the things that I'm going to probably talk about quite frequently, is always treat every call like it's going to be could turn into something bad. Because this one night, and I will never forget it, and it was the first time I ever actually pointed my weapon at somebody. And it was late at night, and me, the Emory officer, and my partner were the only three working the county. And we get a call of a suicidal subject. And at this point at my career, we would get these calls a lot, and it was nothing. We're like, so at this particular time, whenever I heard this call, I was like, oh man, he ain't gonna do it. He's just wanting attention. And so I remember we pulled up. I'm getting out of my car, the Emory officer's getting out of the car, and I'm just nonchalant getting out of the car. And I remember the Emory officer going, hey, he's got a gun. And instantly it snapped back into, oh, this just got real quick. And at the time, I did not have a tack light on my pistol. I did the the old school flashlight under the gun technique. And luckily the Emory officer, he had pointed his spotlight on his patrol unit where that guy was. So it was a little, maybe 2-bedroom house, had a little roof that went over to the garage, and then a porch on the side of the house. And this dude is sitting in a rocking chair, and I remember seeing him sitting there rocking, kind of rocking a little bit, and he had the shotgun in between his legs. And I can't remember if he had it up under his chin, or if he just was just holding on to it. I can't really remember, it was so long ago. But I remember instantly, tunnel vision starts kind of setting in a little bit, and your mind starts racing, what to do, because never experienced anything like that. And so found me some type of cover. It was right behind this big oak tree that was in the yard. And the Emory officer walked around on the other side of the truck and started talking to the guy. And I remember just hearing the Emory officer just talking to the dude. And so, I posted up and got me a good clear angle where if that guy decided to get up and point the shotgun at the Emory officer, I could tag him with no issue. But because the Emory officer was pretty close to that guy, trying to talk to him and trying to calm him down. And at the time, we had body cameras that didn't record half the time, didn't record for long periods of time, and sometimes wouldn't record at all if you had it on. And that was a big problem at that time, because I started, I heard a lot of the stories over the years about the DA's office and how they looked upon officers and how they were always after officers. And so while I'm standing here having my gun pointed at this guy, that's running into my mind. You know, what's gonna, if we end up having to kill this guy, what's gonna be the aftermath of it? What am I gonna have to endure after this? You know, if this guy decides to stand up and point the gun at anybody, or you know, anything like that. So, because that guy, he couldn't see me. I was in a very good spot where he couldn't see me, and if he would have rose and pointed a gun at the Emory officer, you know, we would have dealt with that accordingly. But then I remember my partner showing up, Roger, and I still have this little image in my head, but he shows up, walks around to the back side of the house, and I remember there's that little space area. Well, he almost leaps across, and that's all you see is him leap across and just disappear in the dark. And I'm like, oh shit, which I didn't know what he was gonna do, because he kind of went around, and the radios at the time sucked really bad, so he went around, and then I didn't really see him anymore. But Emory officer was doing good, talking to him, trying to calm him down. The guy's like, I'm not coming off the porch, I'm not going to the hospital, and I'm not going to jail. And he just kept repeating that over and over and over again. So I'm still behind this tree with my pistol pointed at him, and all the thoughts are running through my mind like, this is crazy. What's going to happen if we have to kill this guy? And I'm thinking about that, thinking about him, thinking about everybody else that's around, my two partners, and, I'm sitting there worrying if I'm going to go to prison for doing my job, because of all the, the stories I've already heard about the DA's office wanting to go after cops. And the family of this guy, I think it was the girlfriend, she shows up and starts talking to him. Well, thankfully for her, she shows up and starts talking to the guy. He finally puts the gun down, and we were able to secure him and secure the weapon and everything like that, and get him the help that he needed. But after that was, we left and everything like that. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, that was wild. We could have possibly had to shoot that guy. And that's also one of the first things I saw about mental health is, man, somebody, he obviously he was in a spot where he felt like that was his only way out. And that was kind of rough seeing that, somebody at that point. And throughout my whole life, through high school, and I've never seen anybody that was like that. And so that was really crazy. And hopefully that guy's doing good to this day. I know after that incident, I think that guy moved away, because he had a bunch of other guns in the house, and thankfully he didn't go in his home and barricade himself or start shooting at us. Luckily it ended peacefully, and nobody got hurt. But so that had happened, and we all sat and debrief. And that was one thing we always did as a shift, is we would, after something like that happened, we would sit and talk about it, things we could have done better, and which that's what you're supposed to do. But it wasn't too long after then I didn't experience it myself. The Emory officer got to experience the stories that everybody has heard about the DA's office. So one night we get a call at a hotel room over in the city of Emory. The Bentry Motel is what it was called. And if you wanted to find people with warrants, drugs, anything like that, that's the place you wanted to hang out at. It was notorious for attracting the criminal element. It was a cheap motel, and you know, people that were running it during that time didn't really care about, you know, what clientele that they attracted over there. So we get a call of a guy setting a trash can on fire inside his hotel room and, you know, getting into an argument with people that are there. So we show up, and I remember we showed up and a lot of people started, you know, just scattering, going in their rooms and stuff like that. So we go to the room where the guy apparently set the trash can on fire, which sure enough, there's a black trash can in the middle of the hotel room, and it's smoking, and, you know, we're all trying to figure out where the guy that, you know, did this, where he went. So we seen some guys, you know, out. They were just kind of watching everything go on. So we show up. We start talking with people, and the Emory officer noticed a guy go inside a hotel, you know, one of the rooms. And when we walked up to talk to some of the other people, they're like, "Oh, nobody went in there." And of course, you know, we're calling them out on their bullshit. We're like, "Dude, we literally saw it. Like, you know, we're not dumb." And so we go in. I remember we started hooking up people, because it was just, they were giving us a bunch of bullshit stories. And I remember going into the hotel room, finding a guy hiding behind the door in the bathroom. I'm like, "What the fuck are you hiding behind the door for?" We hook him up, bring him out, and you know, we're all standing there talking, trying to figure out, you know, where this other guy, this mystery person is. And well, my partner Roger, he walks off, doesn't say nothing, just kind of just walks off. So I remember me and the Emory officers talking, you know, we're talking to these guys, and all of a sudden you hear yelling, and my partner giving him commands. So we both take off running over to where he was. So it was on the back side of this hotel area, and at the time I was, you know, chunky guy, wasn't really in shape. I remember running. Well, there's this tall fence, and I try to climb up this tall ass fence, and I'm like, "Nope, can't fucking do it." So I jump down, go all the way around, run up. Well, the Emory officer, he already leaped over the fence, and that was, you know, one of the times I'm like, "Hey, I need to, like, get in shape." Like, that's, you know, where that's important at. Because I mean, if you can't help your buddy, or you take a couple minutes to go around, you know, an obstacle, that 2 minutes can, you know, make a difference, right? So I remember we get up to the guy, and well, before that, you hear a pop, and my partner tased him and just giving him commands. So we go around, we get up to him, and we go try to put hands on with this guy. And this dude started the fight was on at that time. Me, my partner, and the Emory officer were all on top of this dude trying to get him under control, and we couldn't get him under control. I remember we ended up getting handcuffs on him, but then we're still fighting with him. I mean, we're fighting with him forever. And you know, after the fact, we joked about it, but you know, dispatch is trying to give us a call for I think it was agency assist. There was a dope car coming across into our county, and you know, we're all just kind of like, really? Like, we already told dispatch, you know, we're fighting with the one person, and it's 3 of us for the whole county. But so we're sitting there trying to fight with this dude. I mean, it took a while for us to finally get him cuffed up to where he couldn't move. But I think we had 1 pair of handcuffs on him, and then we had another set going up and down, hooking to his belt loop, so he couldn't move, because he was kicking. I mean, he kicked the Emory officer. I know he kicked Roger, kicked me a few times. And when we finally got him up, moved him, he you know, we were asking him all these questions, you know, asked him how much he smoked, what did he take, and he's like, "Man, I smoked everything. I'm higher than eagle pussy," is what he said. So we get, you know, handle that call, and a couple days later, I remember talking with the Emory officer, and the Rangers came and was looking into this video, you know, the body cam and stuff like that. And I'm like, "Well, you know, we didn't do anything wrong. Like, the dude was fighting. It took 3 of us, even if, you know, even if there was probably 5 of us, he still would have been fighting all of us. I mean, I was a pretty big guy. Keith was a pretty strong guy. Roger was a pretty, you know, strong guy. I mean, and this guy was acting like we were nothing. So the DA's office had reviewed the video whenever the case got turned in and thought that the Emory officer used excessive force. And, you know, that was the first time I ever experienced, you know, hearing all the stories about the DA at Rains County going after cops. Well, now I'm seeing it, you know, in reality that he's doing this. And that was one of the first, you know, clues that, hey, I need to go. Like, I need to go somewhere else. And so after that, you know, the ranger reviewed it, you know, was like, if I'm not mistaken, he's like, man, they could have shot him and you know, been okay. Because, I mean, he was fighting. I mean, they couldn't get him under control. But so after that kind of dropped the morale a lot, especially now, you know, now it's proven that the DA's office is just hungry over going after cops. I mean, I'll just put it that way. But because, you know, he's stuck in his little world of everything's perfect and everybody, you know, you should just stand there and let somebody beat on you, and, you know, you're supposed to just stand there and just be nice. But that's the other thing too, is that he's never experienced anything like that and never will, because he's a coward. But so that was a morale, definitely brought the morale down. So we didn't do anything. You know, we quit doing stuff, stopping cars, searching stuff, because, you know, if we did anything, or if we got into any type of use of force situation, you know, DA is going to call the Rangers in because he thinks that there's, you know, excessive force. And, you know, and it never stopped there either. But that's another thing too, is, you know, you got somebody sitting behind a desk watching all these different videos, and this goes for every DA's office, you know, in the country that's like this particular DA in Rains County, sitting there behind a desk watching these videos and sitting back, well, I watched this on TV and this is how they did it, or I would have done it this way. Well, that's the problem. You know, you've never stepped foot in those shoes. You've never been put in situations like that. You go and stay at your house over in the golf course and play golf all day. So you don't get to experience any of this. You refuse to ride out with any of the officers that offer for you to come out and ride so you can see what it's like. You don't want to see it. That's the problem. He doesn't want to see it. Doesn't want to see the negative side at all. Doesn't want to see how people, you know, act towards, you know, other officers, and, you know, the general public, and how they act towards cops nowadays is just ridiculous. Like, the sense of entitlement that everybody has to argue with an officer on the side of the road, or you know, as soon, like, if there's a scene going on, the audacity that people have to walk up and just start being an asshole, or, you know, what's your badge number? Like, that doesn't, like, they feel like they're powerful by asking that information. And it's like, you know, when did the entitlement start for everybody to think it's okay to argue with police and, you know, try to dictate how they're going to do their jobs? And that's what's, you know, nowadays, and it's worse now. You know, you see all these videos all the time of these people getting in these cops' face and just being complete assholes. I'll tell you what, in the 2000s, you know, 1990s and stuff like that, that wouldn't fly. You get punched in the mouth. Or, you know, these drivers that are arguing with these officers on the side of the road, back then, they'll just bust your window out and take you out of the car. But now it's like, you can't do that now because, you know, that's where it goes back to admin. How is the admin at that department? Are they gonna back you? Because, you know, not all departments, you know, have admin that are going to stick up for you. There's very few departments now that are like that. But, you know, you watch these videos all the time of just people just being just complete just idiots, and it's sad to see that. You know, law enforcement now, the profession, it's not like it was back in the day. Like, nobody wants to be cops anymore, and I don't blame people, because why am I gonna go to work and constantly have that fear of going to prison, or, you know, getting fired or getting rolled up because I did my job and the criminal didn't like how I, you know, did my job because he was being an asshole or fighting, so I'm going to complain on him now, and then I'm, you know, going to get in trouble. But it's not like that everywhere, just in certain places. But seeing how Rains County DA Vitito did that to us that day, that was really a morale killer. And I wanted to leave, and I remember applying to another department, and you know, didn't get it. It was a pretty big department. A lot of people were applying for that spot. I think I maybe had a year and a half at that time. So, you know, you can understand why bigger departments like that are going to hire people with, you know, more experience. So that kind of sucked whenever I didn't get that spot, because I wanted to leave, because I didn't want to have to deal with the DA's office. I didn't want to have to deal with going to work every day and, you know, be in fear if I shot somebody, that, you know, the DA is going to send me to prison. But you know, slowly then as time went on after that day, and after we, you know, figured out everything like that, and at this time I didn't know what, you know, TMPA was, because that was one of the questions that the Emory officer asked. He's like, dude, do you have TMPA or CLEAT? And I'm like, what are those? He's like, dude, you need to get, like, on your phone right now and sign up for that. I said, okay. And it's like $25 a month. So but it's, you know, attorneys that are on standby for, you know, any type of situation you get to, or if you get into shootings. And you know, and I was very glad that I got that, because, you know, the whole year and a half I didn't think about that stuff. You know, I didn't think I was going to run into a DA that had a hard-on for prosecuting cops either. You know, I figured everybody, you know, in that government worker, you know, was, you know, supported cops. But so I ended up getting TMPA, and, you know, felt a lot better after having that, and then knowing that, you know, the DA is now an police officer. And so after that, we just, you know, then we went back to normal work after we got over that little morale killer for a little while, and work continued on. Another thing that I saw in people was, I can't think of a word for it, but so I remember one night I had gotten the call. It was just me and my partner working, and the Emory officer, I think he took off vacation or something like that, but he wasn't there. So I got dispatched into the city of Emory for a lady who says she got assaulted. So I go, and she went to a friend's house. I went and took the report, and you know, she was crying. I mean, so upset, just upset, you know, scared to go back home, and because she said that her boyfriend at the time had assaulted her. And so took the report, went back Told her I was going to type up warrants for him because she didn't know where he was. So go back to the office, and I told her, I said, well, just stay here. Stay here for the night. Gives me time to get these warrants typed up, and then we can go look for him. So I remember going back to the office, typing my report, getting the warrants and everything like that. Then we get dispatched to an address, and apparently the boyfriend assaulted her, threatened her with a knife, and now he's walking down the highway. So I remember responding. I was right around the corner, seeing the guy walking. He had his hands in his pockets. I remember turning around. Probably not the best thing to do, but I remember parking right in the middle of the highway with all my lights on, getting out, calling the dude, at gunpoint, getting him on the ground, and a partner shows up and gets him cuffed up. So it's the same lady that had called, that was staying at her friend's, and said that she was assaulted and everything like that. So she's telling me everything that's happened, tonight, and told me that she was assaulted, pointed a knife at her, threatened her with a knife. So we took him to jail. I did an EPO for this guy, and that was pretty standard. Anytime there was domestic violence or anything like that, we always did an EPO. That way it was more of a CYA thing. Even if they didn't want it, made sure to do it that way, because if that guy goes back and does something worse, or kills her, they can't say, well, they didn't do all the proper things, and then sue us, because everybody's out to sue everybody. But so we took him to jail, got the EPO, and that was it. Did my report, and went home. And I remember coming back to work, and the Emory officer, he had heard about it, and he's like, hey man, that guy's back over there. I'm like, do what? He goes, yeah, somebody said they saw him out in the front yard. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, let's go sit up on him. And so I went and sat in a spot, and the Emory officer did too. Well, sure as shit, homeboy walks out of the house, taking out the trash, acting like it's just a normal day. So I remember we all pulled up, swarmed him, got him. Well, the victim, allegedly, she's comes sliding up in the driveway, gets out of her car, and is like, what are y'all doing here? I'm like, he's violating his EPO. He's not supposed to be here. I want him out of cuffs. I've already talked to the judge, and he dismissed this EPO. And I'm like, well, nobody's told me anything. So, because a couple nights ago, you were crying, and you were so terrified of him that you didn't want to go back home, but you went back home. So I called JP at the time, and was like, hey, is this EPO not valid anymore? And he's like, yeah, I signed off on it. Well, she pulled out, and I swear to you, I shit you not, she pulls out a fucking napkin with his signature on it. And I'm like, I remember looking at the napkin, and I'm like, okay, it's a napkin, So I give her it back. Well, then that's when I called the judge, and he's like, yeah, the EPO is not valid. So took him out of cuffs, released him, and she's just, straight up Karen. She's like, now y'all get off my property. I was like, cool. So we leave, and that was one of the times I'm like, it just didn't make sense to me, like, at all. And there are some domestic violence cases where the females don't want to speak out because that's the breadwinner, but she was working. This particular person, just, there's all sorts of issues with her, and she even runs a daycare, believe it or not. But I don't know anybody who would want to take their kids over there, just how many times we've had to go to her house. But because we even tried calling CPS to shut her place down because of there was some marijuana use going on in there, because the boyfriend at the time, he would smoke marijuana in the house, and you know, CPS wouldn't close it down at all. But yeah, that was one of the times that I, you know, witnessed and endured somebody that would use the police as a, you know, as their authority to make something happen, and, you know, get somebody away for a night or two, and then all of a sudden they, you know, everything's good. You know, we're the bad guys, right? We're the bad guys because, you know, we were doing our jobs. But I think I'm gonna stop here for the video. Like I said, hope everybody has a good Mother's Day. Anybody, you know, that wants to reach out to me, feel free. You know, I enjoy talking to everybody. But everybody that's, you know, out on the streets tonight working, be safe. And then everybody that's got to work day shift tomorrow, just be safe. And y'all have a good Sunday.